Hello and welcome to another episode of the Jordan and Matt Show. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Matt.
Matt, we're already down to what, 3 weeks left in the season? What's going on? It feels like I know we talked about it a little bit last week, but it feels like just yesterday we were getting ready for the season, getting hyped up, and now all of a sudden we're looking at playoff projections and starting to see some teams where you're like, hey, the league is decided with this game and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. And 3 weeks to go in the season, and Vista has a bye week, so they have 2 games left. So
I
so
you know so Colfax is in the same boat. I think that late bye week is actually kind of a blessing because it's almost a reset button for those last game or two games, and then you almost get a fresh start going into playoffs.
yeah, I kind of like it. Although I don't know, like all of our teams sort of had a bite in the first five or 6 weeks. I don't know. I only know Vista's the only thing I know of that has a late one. I'm sure there's others, but I don't know why they're so late. But
Yeah, I know Colfax does it because I think there's an odd number of teams in the league,
mm,
so it works out like that. But I think most leagues usually do that. Like week 5 is your bye week, or week 6, I guess. You play your 5 games,
okay.
bye week, and then you go into league play.
And I
But
thought your bye week kind of switched up, but Vista's has always been this late for like several years. I,
I
uh,
like it though. I mean, it's why they have fresh legs going into playoffs every year.
yeah.
But speaking of high school football, Matt, we had a very big night on Friday night, a lot of very big games. I know you were at a game of a team chasing its first league title on Friday. Can I talk about that game a little bit?
Yeah, it wasn't one of the bigger games, but I hadn't seen Wood Creek yet, and I wanted to see him. So I went over to Roseville and Wood Creek High School, and checked out them playing Yuba City. They whipped on them pretty good, 49-7. I thought the game would have been a little closer than that, but it really wasn't. Wood Creek got off to a little bit of a slow start, but in the second half, they scored every time they had the ball, and once that offense got rolling, they moved it pretty well. They only scored twice in the first half, touchdown runs by Hakeem Anderson and Dylan Perot. But like I said, the second half they scored, I think, all 5 times they had the ball. So they couldn't, you would say you couldn't stop them. Brody Krupp scored on a 59-yard touchdown run and touchdown passes, 33 yards to Geo and 21 yards to Krupp from Josiah Melendez, who played the second half. Austin Catapultus had a injured his left shoulder during the game in the first half. I don't think it was serious, but he had ice pack on in the second half. And Josiah Melendez came in to play quarterback. And I know Brad Hunkins is big on him, and he said he's a sophomore, but I guess next year he's lined up to be the quarterback with Catapultus graduating. So anyway, he played the second half. And Hunkins credited his defense. Yuba City's only points came in the final minute running clock, and they just happened to score before the game the clock ended. Literally, it was the last play of the game. So defense essentially had a shutout. And yeah, they're closing in. Well, they have one loss. Wood Creek lost. I forget. Lost to Antelope, I think. So I don't know what their league title situation is, but they're gonna have to beat somebody to do it.
I think they need Intercom to lose one. But I mean, if you look at that league, I mean, Roseville has pieces that could beat Intercom.
Yeah.
Antelope, they're not great this year, but they have pieces that can do it. I mean, really, I would argue if you get them on a off night, I think Yuba City could even do it just because of the athletes they have at that school. I know Wood Creek kind of handled Yuba City, but I know we all kind of expected that to be a little bit of a closer game than it
Yeah.
ended up being. But
Wood Creek's an odd team because of all the teams I've seen this year, and I've seen teams lesser than them like Oakmont and well, I don't want to say that, but I've seen a few teams. I for let me phrase it this way: for a team that has one loss, Wood Creek doesn't really have. They don't pass the eye test. They don't have really big linemen, and
right.
their skill players don't look really super fast. But if they get it done with, I don't know, I don't know if they say smoke and mirrors or what,
Yeah,
but
it was the same thing when I saw them play that playoff game at Placer last year. I was watching the warm up and I was like, Placer should win this game just with what they have, but it wasn't even a situation. I mean, Placer had opportunities to win. Yeah, there were some turnovers, but a lot of it was just Wood Creek executing, and I think it's just they're a well coached team that
Yeah,
does a good job.
yeah. Another game that I was not at was West Park, who again is a big game next week, as you know. Is it next week? Yeah,
Yes, next week.
yeah. They their head coach Jason Tenner has said I think he says every week I talk to him, he goes, "We're just trying to get better every week. We're just trying to get better every week. We're just trying to get better every week." And they did that this week. Yeah, he was a bit hesitant to go up to Grass Valley to play the Valley Union. He said that it seems like it's always a full moon up there when he goes up there, and it's kind of sketchy. But West Park won easily 62-21. Off to a slow start, pick six, I think, started the game. But after that, he said the floodgates pretty open pretty easily. But he called it their best game of the season, their most complete game of the season. So I know Tanner's happy with his team. Jade Jackson, quarterback, threw 6 touchdown passes. Two to Ryan Sisson and Mason Johnson had big games. Two starting wide receivers. Sisson caught 4 passes for 198 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Mason Johnson caught 6 passes for 103 yards and 3 touchdowns. Marcus Chima had 4 catches, 41 yards and a touchdown. And Obi Garcia caught a touchdown pass from Parjan Gill. And Ben Osby also had a rushing touchdown. So, and let's check out this game. Calvin Johnson, a linebacker. I mean, every week I talk about him because he's up there in tackles every week. But West Park has some injuries, so Calvin Johnson started inside linebacker. They moved him to outside linebacker this week, to just because they like him better there because they have injuries. And he had a game of a lifetime. He had 6 solo tackles and was in 11 total, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He recovered both fumbles and recovered one for the end zone, and the other one he got inside the 5-yard line. So he just recovered caused both fumbles, got both fumble recoveries, and almost scored on the 2 fumble recoveries. And Tanner just said Calvin's getting better every week. He understands the game. He understands defense, and he just played a great first game at linebacker for them. So West Park, they're ready for Placer this week.
Yep, it's going to be an interesting one this coming week. And then Matt, I know we had a really big one that covered both of our areas on Friday night. I know you talked to Coach Paul Doherty. Kind of talk a little bit about that one,
Yeah.
and then I'll throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah, I just asked him when I wanted to call and talking about Ryder Lyons quarterback, and I just asked him how the game went, and he said it was similar to the Oak Ridge in that the defense got 2 stops early, back-to-back stops. So I don't know they're 3 and outs, but they got stops. And Folsom scored their first 2 possessions, took a 14-0 lead, just like they did against Oak Ridge. So it's similar in that sense. And then he said, defense put them in a good spot. Offense took advantage of it. Next thing you know, we're up 14-0. And, and at halftime, I think it was a 14-7 game, I think. So it was a 1-score game, just like it might have been Oak Ridge, which 14. I can't remember what the score was at halftime, but yeah, it was a 1-score game. In the second half, Folsom pulled away a little bit. So he compared it a lot to the Oak Ridge game and credited defense for, carrying the team basically, and then until the offense was ready to put some points on the board. So what's your vantage point of it?
So I mean, I came into this one expecting it to be, going down to the wire. I picked Rockland to win this one. They entered the game with a 19-game home winning streak that dated back to 2019. So, it was one of those where I just felt like the momentum was on Rockland's side. And talking to those players after the Quarry Bowl, they expected to win this game. So, come in, Rockland goes 3 and out to start the game. And then they actually got Folsom on like a 3rd and 12, I want to say. And Lyons just scrambles around, makes an insane throw, and finds, I believe it was Jamison Powell for a touchdown. And all of a sudden, it was a great throw too. And all of a sudden, 7-0, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay." Folsom punched him in the mouth. Rockland comes back out, another 3 and out, and then again, Lyons finds RJ Witten for, I want to say it was like a 51-yard gain or something. And that sets up a 1-yard touchdown little pop pass to Brian Ray. all of a sudden it's 14-0, and I think everyone was looking around like, what just happened?
So
Because
that was what was 5 minutes in the game or so.
yeah, 5 minutes in, Folsom's already scored as many points as they had last season. Um, so it was very interesting. And then all of a sudden, Rockland was kind of moving the ball a little well. They get down the field, they miss a 35-yard field goal off the left goal post. And then what's interesting is Rockland there's a little bit of a mix up. Special teams really hurt Rockland in this game. There was a play where Folsom punts. Rockland calls for a fair catch, but there's an inadvertent whistle before the ball gets to the returner's hands, and the returner muffs a punt, and Folsom recovers. Folsom fans are booing because inadvertent whistle. We got to replay the down. And everyone's like, oh, well, I actually looked at someone that was shooting the game as well. And I said, Rockland got kind of lucky there that they get a redo. Well, what does Rockland do is they muff the punt again off the inadvertent whistle. RJ Witten recovers, and he actually recovered, and it bounced right into his hands, and it hit him in stride, and he ran into the end zone and scored, but you can't advance it. So Folsom gets the ball, and then they march down, and Rockland stops him on the 14-yard line. Folsom turns it over on downs, and then Rockland gets an 86-yard touchdown drive, and Reeve Sloan punches it in 14-7 at halftime. And all of a sudden, I'm like, Rockland might win this game now, because that's a huge momentum shift going into the half. Then Folsom gets the ball to start third quarter and goes 3 and out. And all of a sudden, I'm like, Rockland's like, this game should be 14-10.
Yeah.
But I'm like, either way, it's 14-7. And I was like, I really was starting to think Rockland. And lo and behold, what happens? Rockland muffs the punt again. And Folsom takes over at 17-yard line. A couple plays later, Lions goes in. It's 21-0. Rockland 3 and out, punt gets blocked, and again Folsom comes in and scores, and all of a sudden it's 28-7. Everyone's looking like, what just happened? Folsom makes it 34-7, and then credit to Rockland, it felt like the game was over. They punch one in with 4 minutes left, and everyone's like, okay, now it's 34-14, looks a little more respectable, but then they get a stop and they go down and score again. It's 34-21 with like little under 2 minutes left, but it was enough that I think everyone was starting to go, if Rockland gets an onside kick here, this game gets really interesting real fast. And they don't get it. Folsom ends up kneeling it out, game over. But just a very interesting game. I think in a way, I was telling someone that the game was closer than the 34-7 score showed, but I think 34-21 is an accurate reflection of how close the game was actually played. But I also, if it makes sense, the game wasn't that close. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was a reflection of how evenly matched those teams were.
Yeah.
And I talked to Adams after the game, Rockland coach Jason Adams, and he said, he thought going into that game that if we played them 10 times, they'd split 5-5. I still think Rockland kind of believes that leaving the game. I would say probably 5-5 or 6-4. So, Rockland definitely has the ability to beat Folsom. Problem is they don't get another shot this year because they're going to be in different divisions for playoffs. But I think Folsom is beaming right now because the two teams that I think were the biggest chances to knock them off this year were Rockland and Oak Ridge, and you just went 2-0 against them to start league. That's got to feel pretty good. And one thing I asked Doherty about too was the early touchdowns. And he said, looking back now, I know Rockland punched the 2 late ones in, but that early 14-0 start, 5 minutes in, that was the difference in the game. Yeah. I mean, you don't get those touchdowns, then all of a sudden Rockland wins that game 21-20.
Yeah.
So
I didn't realize the special teams had a big. I didn't realize special teams had a big impact in the game.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah.
And then some of the other ones we had too in the area. Saturday night, I guess I'll start with Colfax and Wheatland. We had a very interesting game. It was Wheatland was debuting its brand new turf field, so its first true home game of the year. These two teams played in a very close one on Saturday or on a Thursday night. Last year it was a 10-6 win for Colfax. This one was a very gritty and chippy game, and it was an ugly game, but it was most importantly, it was a win for Colfax. It was a scoreless first quarter, but Colfax really just wore Wheatland down. The offense struggled initially, but it put its first points on the board with 4:24 left in the half when River Roach scrambled and evaded several Pirate defenders, found a wide open Malachi Thompson who ran in for an 8-yard touchdown. They'd connect on a 4-yard touchdown pass again late in the second quarter to give Falcons a 13-0 lead going in. Roach started the game 2 for 8 with 18 yards and interception, but he settled in well and finished with 286 yards and 3 touchdowns, completing 18 of his 29 attempts. Top target of the night was Sammy Lombard, who reeled in 5 catches for 92 yards. Wheatland ended up getting what Colfax, I want to say they went down and got one more, maybe. Let me look at my box score again. So Colfax goes down third quarter. They kick a field goal, and then an 81-yard pass from Roach to Austin Leiden made it 23-0. And that's really the one that kind of slammed the door on this game. Wheatland did get 14 points in the fourth quarter, but it was very, game was kind of decided already. I don't think Colfax was already running the offense the way it did. So a 26-14 win for the Falcons. Now that's 2 league wins in a row for Colfax, who's sitting pretty at 5-3 going into a bye week. And now you're essentially refreshed for 12 Bridges and Bear River. And this is a Colfax team too that I would not count out of going on a playoff run. They're very, very hard-nosed, disciplined, just a strong team, and they definitely have the tools to make this interesting in Division 6. One last one I'll talk about, Matt, before throwing it back over to you. Bear River, they had a late defensive stand against Marysville to win 40-39. That was kind of a cool thing. So Bear River coach Tanner Mathias had deja vu in this game because his first win as a head coach, Marysville scored a touchdown as time expired to make it 14-13. They went for 2, and Bear River knocked the pass down to get the win. Friday night, the Indians scored again as time expired and decided to go for 2 and try to steal the win. This time they kept it on the ground, but Blake Simning stuffed Marysville's Dennis Siders behind the line of scrimmage, and Bear River hung on for the win. Bear River now picks up that 4th win that has eluded them for the last couple seasons. And they're at home for 2 of the final 3 games. Big win there for Bear River. Siders had a huge night for Marysville. He had 237 yards and 3 touchdowns on 26 carries. Bear River quarterback Cole Stowers had an impressive night. He threw 239 yards and completed 15 of his 22 passes. He did have 2 interceptions, but he also had 3 touchdowns. So now Bear River, big game coming up. They are going to be taking on Center this Friday, and that's team Bear River's kind of handled at times in the past. So I think, Center too, they've dropped 2 straight. I kind of like the Bruins in an upset in this one, but we'll get to that at a different time. But yeah, PVL is going to be interesting because realistically, if Wheatland and Center or if Wheatland and Marysville can each find one more win, you could have a league where everyone makes the playoffs. And I mean, but all those teams are good enough to make it for sure. But Matt, that I guess for that round of games, that'll do it. Let's throw it back over to you. What were some of the other games you saw?
Let's finish off the SFL here. Carter Jackson. I mean, what more can you say about this guy? He had 3 touchdown runs in the second half of 65, 52, and 75 yards in a Granite Bay win over Whitney. And you take away those 3 runs, that's 192 yards rushing, and Whitney would have held Jackson at 91 yards, and the Grizzlies to 4.3 yards per carry. But with those numbers, I mean, obviously you can't take those runs away. He rushed for 283 yards, and the average, and the Granite Bay's yards per carry increased from 3 yards per carry to 9 yards per carry, and Jackson averaged just shy of 15 yards per carry. So. He's the type of, Barry Sanders back that can take it to the house anytime. And when you have a player like that, you can keep him in wraps, under wraps for much of the game. But if you leave one small space open, he can find it and will find it, and he will do the damage. And that was basically enough to, Granite Bay led at halftime. It was 14-3. I mean, it was still a close game. but 3 long touchdown runs blew it open. I don't even think I have the final score here, but Granite Bay won easily. But Catalico said it started up front with the defense. I started with the defense. He goes, we were only up 14-3 at halftime. The defense kept us in the game and allowed us time to get things going offensively. And he said, we're offenses that gave us some time to sort some things out, and they're able to pop Carter for those long runs. And he credited defensive leaders Frank Cusano, Isaiah Ennie. He said those two always stand on film because they're the anchors of the defense. So and Granite Bay improves to 2-0 in SFL, looking good, and they play Oak Ridge this week, and leads me to the Oak Ridge Del Oro game, which I watched on the national network, whatever you want to call it. I can never remember the name of it. NFHS network.
Yep.
So that was an exciting game. Oak Ridge jumped on top 14-0, and then pretty much from that point forward, I mean, Granite Bay got up, tied up at 21. Then Oak Ridge scored, Granite Bay scored, Oak Ridge scored, Granite Bay scored, and then Oak Ridge scored one final time to make it 42-35, and then they stopped Del Oro, who had the ball for what would be the last drive, going down to tie the game or go for the win at home, but they Oak Ridge stopped them on 3-and-out and ended it. So and the win was number 200 for Casey Taylor, who had 149 of those wins as coach of Del Oro. So he said it was nice to get the 200th win up there. A lot of good memories up there, and some former players up there. Mason Hurst, Stone Smart was there, he said. So it's good to see those guys. And he got soaked with 2 buckets of cold water after the game. So I don't know I forgot to ask him how that felt. But anyway, in this game, let's go back to it was the best game of the year for Joaquin Grace Mercado, Oak Ridge's quarterback. He threw 4 touchdown passes, and what had been missing from the Oak Ridge offense was there this night, and that was the big play. Oak Ridge has been scoring 21, 28 points, grinding it out, hitting their tight ends. But this game, they threw some deep passes and they completed them. A 58-yard pass from Grace Mercado to Jaden Anderson made it. This is not right. Okay, I'm missing a piece of paper. But anyway, he completed a 58-yard pass to Jaden Anderson, and he completed a 53. Well, that was the last play. That was a run. I don't know. He completed 2 long passes over 50 yards to Jaden Anderson, and he had 4 touchdowns for the game. So it was a good game for Grace Mercado, and that big play. The ability to make a big play is a key thing in high school football. So then the great game winning touchdown was a 53-yard run by Jason Womack to end the game. And I found that he had Jason Womack for 53 yards and Anderson for 64 yards. So anyway, long story short, Joaquin had his best game for the Trojans. It was a 200th win for Casey Taylor, and they get out of the cellar, and poor Del Oro 0-2 with Whitney in the SFL.
Yeah, it's the SFL is a gauntlet. I mean, it was crazy going into that Oak Ridge DO game, thinking, one of these 2 teams is going to be 0-2 in the SFL.
Yeah.
When, a couple of weeks ago, I think both those teams were top 4 in the section. That game was a little closer than I expected it to be honest. I thought Oak Ridge was going to pull away a little more, but, it was a breath of fresh air to see it be a shootout. I had something up on it. I kind of, it is kind of funny because one, when you think of a Casey Taylor led team and you think of Del Oro, you are thinking you are going to probably see 400 yards of rushing, those 2 combined. So I don't think anyone expected the quarterbacks to throw for 9 of the 11 touchdowns in the game.
Yeah.
But it is going to be really interesting to see. In my opinion, Ryder Lyons and Caden Pinnock are just on a whole nother level when it comes to quarterbacks in this league. And I think Del Oro, in a weird way, even with a loss there, I think they have a lot of confidence now going into this Rockland game. And I think this is a game that a lot of people might think Rockland will win handily, but I don't have that feeling. I have a
I don't either. Yeah.
tells me that Del Oro could, win this game. And I know we kind of talked about it with our picks a little bit, Matt. I know you're trying to catch Bill, but I was kind of in the same boat of I really wanted to pick Del Oro to win that game. I just, I ended up going with Rockland, but
Yeah.
I would not be shocked at all to see Dio pull away with a win on Friday.
I'm the same way. I wanted to go Del Oro, I think, and I just couldn't do it. But I would not be surprised at all if they won the game.
I wouldn't either. Is it my go now?
Yeah, I got three more after this, but yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I've got a couple others. Placer and Lincoln. This is a game that's been an awesome rivalry for a long time. I think Placer coach Joey Montoya said that Lincoln is the only school that he's played every single year that he's been at Placer. Both schools go back over a century. And they've had their fair share of legendary contests, but this one was going to be the last for the foreseeable future, with Lincoln leaving the FBL to rejoin the Pioneer Valley League next year. And the Hillman bid the Zebras a pretty rude farewell, storming out to an early lead and cruising to a 42-7 victory for their third straight win. Placer's running back committee had another impressive night in the ground game. Hillman ran wild for 319 yards. Four of the five featured backs in this averaged over 10 yards per carry, which I can't remember the last time I've seen that.
Yeah.
Junior Baylor Kelly he only had 7 carries in this one, but he made the most of it with 118 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's Placer's leading rusher through 4 games with 684 yards and 9 touchdowns this season. Sophomore Sean Jones added 90 yards on 8 carries, finding the end zone twice, bringing his season total up to double digits with 10. He's a hard-nosed, power-running player, and he's played in just 4 games this year. He got hurt. I don't think he played in the Casa game. Then he got hurt in the Roseville game in the first half. So they pulled him, and he came back, I want to say, against Rio Linda. But he's picked up at least 1 touchdown in the 4 games he's played and 80 yards rushing in each one. So I think, we've talked about a little bit of the playoff stuff coming up. I know right now, as it stands right now, Placer and Vista are projected to be on the same side of the bracket. I can't imagine Vista loves potentially drawing Placer for a quarterfinal game again, but we'll get to that in a minute. I mean, I guess if you're getting to this stage, everyone you're going to see is good. But if you're Vista, you're probably like, hey man, why can't we, why can't we get someone a little easier in that second round? Placer quarterback,
or let's be honest, just someone different. I mean,
yeah, true. I mean, they've seen each other. I want to say that'd be their 10th meeting in 8 years or something. Placer quarterback Ryan Miller was efficient. He completed 6 of his 7 passes for an even 100 yards. His only blemish of the night was an interception that actually bounced off his tight end's hands. It was a little bit of a high throw, though. On the defensive side, Parker Kelly, the brother of Baylor, covered the field from sideline to sideline and had a season high 13 tackles. He's just 5'7", 165 pounds, but the outside linebacker plays much bigger than his size is. He's made plays on both sides of the ball for the Hillman. Bright side in this one for Lincoln. They had some success running the ball. They entered the game without having reached 100 yards yet this season, but they eclipsed it on Friday with 112 yards. Sophomore Brock Gaylor led the Zebras with 72. Now Lincoln going to play Oakmont on Thursday for senior night. Both teams 0-7, looking for the first win. And Placer, I'll have a little more on this coming up, but Placer is going to face Nevada Union in Grass Valley on Friday for another rivalry week for the Hillman. A couple of the other ones, you talked about Whitney, so I will forego that. The only other one I really have talked to about football-wise, Western Sierra and Woodland Christian. Woodland Christian won this one pretty handily, 46-0. The Wolves are now playing 1-6 Forest Hill this week. Forest Hill being 1-6 really surprises me. That's a team I thought would be a little better at this point this year, but things happen in the high school football season, as you know, Matt. So this one's going to be, one of these teams maybe looks to right the ship and get things doing a little better. But the Wolves really struggling right now. They've gotten shut out in 3 of the last 4 games, so you know they're going to be looking to get something going against the Wildfires. Back to you, Matt.
Yeah, well, speaking of the Wildfires, Valley Christian beat them this week, 47-6. And Valley Christian has won 4 games in a row now, outscoring opponents 184-13. So they are on a roll, and they know it. They're the hardest 2 games, their last 2 games of the season. So they, I don't think Doug Williams thought they'd be winning this much, but he's pleased that they are. He said things are going really well. The only thing that's not going well for them is injuries. They lost 2 guys in the last 2 games. They lost 2 guys for the season, and with a roster of 21, it's never going to lose anybody. Those guys are going to be missed. Not going to be missed when they play teams like Forest Hill, but when they play teams like Delta or Woodland Christian, they're going to be missed. So that's going to hurt them. But aside from the injury bug, they've been playing great. Thomas Rollinger, quarterback, threw 4 touchdown passes, 2 to Matthew Larson, 1 to Rodrickson Williams, and another one to Chase Clary. Rollinger also ran for a touchdown as a Bo Porter, and the Lions also had a safety forced by Sean Fleming. So they have one more game on the road against Argonaut, a team they've never played before, but I guess Doug Williams is familiar with Argonaut. I guess he's been there before, but he says it's crazy. I don't know if you've ever been to a game at Argonaut, but he said the whole town comes out for it, and it's kind of crazy acoustics there, and it just he goes, it'll be an interesting game. But that's Valley Christian. Now they're 5-2, I think. Next game, Oakmont. Bless their heart. They keep grinding. Lost to Ponderosa 21-8. The Quinn Duran scored their touchdown on a catch from Bo Ogles, and he also caught the 2-point conversion for the Vikings. But this was a weird game, and Oakmont has struggled this year, winless, and have not won a game. But one thing that hasn't been a problem has been turnovers. They haven't turned the ball over. They just, 3 and out, whatever. They get stopped, they punt. This game, they turned the ball over 3 or 4 times, which was a surprise to Jake Messina, head coach Jake Messina, because he said, we haven't really turned the ball over. And here in this game, we turned the ball over. And very first play of the game, they fumbled the ball. That's probably a sign of things to come in this one. But what made it strange is Ponderosa, then they scored 21 points, but they held onto the ball. And Ponderosa's quarterback is a running quarterback. And every time, it seemed like every third down, third and long, third and short, he would just tuck it and run. And, Oakland could not get off the field. I don't know what the time of possession was in this game. And I find this so hard to believe. I can't even believe I'm saying it. But Oakmont and their stats on Max Preps ran the ball 9 times and had 9 pass attempts. So they had 18 plays in this entire game. I can't believe that. That's what the stats show.
I don't think I've ever seen that before.
I know, I have not either. Because I asked him, I said, gosh, coach, it says the stats say you had 18 plays. How is that? And he said we couldn't get off the field. And he said they had 6 possessions the whole game. So anyway, that's just crazy. And they have. You said that game's on Thursday night?
Yes, it is.
Man, I almost like to go see that game I mean, one of the teams going to be real happy to get a win there. So, and then my last game is Roseville. And this was Bella Vista's an improved team. Don't get me wrong, but they beat Roseville. Or Roseville beat Bella Vista only 7-0 last week. It was not a good game for Roseville. Adam Rankin said the team got flagged for over 10 penalties for more than 100 yards. It was a very ugly game. And he didn't think. He said on 7 of those penalties, he was looking for where the ref was he couldn't see the 7 penalties. He could see 3 of the 10, but he couldn't see the other 7. But he wasn't too happy with the refs that game. But they got their only touchdown. Aaron Salas scored it in the third quarter, and Joel Bradley got the extra point for the 7-0 win. He said, we're just glad to win that game, glad to move on. It's one of those games that it's a grind and it had no flow and just couldn't get going. But they got the win. That's all that matters. And they play River Valley next, who's winless. before big games at home for Roseville, almost like Valley Christian. Their two biggest games of the season, the last two games with Intercom and Wood Creek.
All right. Yeah, I was very curious about that Roseville Bella Vista game because when I initially saw the score, I thought that it was I thought that someone put it in on Max Preps wrong. So very interesting one. Um, a couple. Well, one I want to give a. I guess I'll start with some of the other sports. But also a shout out to the athlete of the week. For me, it's going to be Brianna Packheiser of Placer flag football. She scored a touchdown for the team on senior night last night and has really just been all over the place type of player for them. She's a linebacker, pass rusher, whatever you want to call it in flag football, I guess. She's also a running back, tight end a little bit for them, but just really can do it all. And she's one of the few that came into that team with football experience because she played freshman football at Placer. So Kaiser is going to be my MVP there, or my player of the week. But yeah, some of the other sports to take a look at. First thing, Placer flag football last night. They played Del Campo on senior night, 20-6 game. Del Campo ended up winning. Let's see, I have the notes down here. This was one of those very strange games where it just felt like, Del Campo got out to that an early 13-0 lead in that first half. And it felt like it was over. And then all of a sudden, Placer even threw an interception late in the first half. But quarterback, what's the last name? I just had it up here. Bear with me here. Maybe we can we'll edit this part out. But Placer quarterback, I have her last name on it. There's it. Serena Sweet ended up making a touchdown saving flagpole to end the half. It was actually 13-6 going into half because Sweet found Packheiser for a 2-yard touchdown with 34 seconds left in the half. And then Placer really stood tall late in the game, but Del Campo ended up punching one touchdown in late to win it 20-6 and stay, I think, 14-0 on the season. But the Hillman played really well. They came in this first time they really had to battle the elements all year because it was raining all game. And the other interesting thing too about this was Del Campo kind of handled Placer the first time they played this year. It was 20-0. And I guess it could have been worse, but Placer really played a lot better this time around and looked really good. Good job by them there. Another one, Del Oro and St. Francis football or flag football. This one was a very interesting game, 0-0 at the end of regulation. And St. Francis was moving the ball very, very well in this game. And Del Oro really struggled throwing downfield deep and everything. But third down in overtime, Delaney Osborne connected with Bella Von Seipler in the end zone for the game's only touchdown. I guess going in to the play, Osborne told Bella that she goes, "Hey, you better get there because this ball's coming to you." So she kind of called her out in the huddle and said, "I'm throwing to you, so make sure you're there." And I asked Bella about it, and she goes, "Yeah, I knew when she told me that I wasn't dropping that pass." They ran the same play earlier in the game actually, and Seipler said she didn't really execute on the route the first time, so she was kind of kicking herself for it, but she knew that she was going to be there for that one. I asked Osborne too. I'm like, so Del Oro had 30 girls come out to try out to play quarterback this year for flag football. How'd you get the starting gig? And she goes, well, I'm a catcher and a center fielder in softball. I'm like, that makes sense. Dio now 11 straight wins, and they're essentially playing for an SFL title Thursday night against Rockland. Dio's 13-2 overall, 9-0 in SFL play, and they're playing Rockland, who is 8-1 in the SFL. That game's going to be at Rockland. First game was a triple overtime thriller. Dio won 6-0. So that should be a interesting game out there. Then just some other action around the area. Bear River girls volleyball has really just stayed hot. They're a scary team right now, 11-0 in PVL play, 25-1 overall, coming off a 3-0 win against Marysville the other day. And then Placer girls volleyball had a big win as well. They beat Lincoln 3-1 on last night, actually. It was first time Placer dropped a set since September 18th, but they've now won 6 in a row. They're playing Nevada Union tonight at home. So a big win there for Placer as they're closing in on a FVL title. And then 12 Bridges girls volleyball, they had 2 straight 3-0 wins in PVL play as they look to make a push for the playoffs. So a shout out to them. Matt, over to you. What did you see from some of the other sports?
Yeah, well, I went with Ryder Lyons for my athlete of the week just because he led Folsom to wins over the Oak Ridge and Rockland. I didn't add up his numbers just for those 2 games, but his numbers for the season, he's completed 69% of his passes for 1,931 yards, 19 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and on the ground he's gained 230 yards and scored 7 touchdowns. And Paul Daugherty compared him to, he was the last quarterback he saw in the area that could scramble as good as Ryder is Ian Book. So not a bad company for Ryder Lyons to be in. He's only a sophomore. And then let's see, Oak Ridge volleyball I went to last Wednesday. They had just gotten back from a Nike tournament in Arizona where they won 2 matches and lost 5, but the 5 matches they lost to were all, top the top 10 teams in their state that they're from. So whether that be South Carolina, well, like South Carolina, the team they played their coach had won something like 14 state championships. So it's like anyway, so the great experience there for Oak Ridge. Trevin Morgan was happy with how they played, and then they proceeded to beat Pleasant Grove in 5 games, which was a nice win. And then next night they played. I think they played Placer and lost, but hey, Placer's going to beat teams because they're good. So, but anyway, Oak Ridge they continue to play well. And then lastly, I have from the Clovis Invitational, the Vista Boys, Edwin Huey, who's had a rough go of it this season. He had his best race on a good time on Saturday at the Clovis Invite, and he helped the boys to place. I think they're the 7th place among 38 teams. So that's a good result. And if Edwin Huey can run like that the rest of the year, that's going to make the Vista Boys a candidate to qualify for the state championships once again. Then also the Oak Ridge girls won the large school or the extra large school division at the Clovis Invitational with the return of Adriana and Garagiola, who was running her first race of the season. Except she had been hurt. She was she had a leg injury, but she came back for this race. Was Oak Ridge's second finisher behind teammate Addie Clinton, who placed 9th, and Garagiola placed 18th. And then junior Fiona Garden, freshman Lottie Boucher, and Amy Madsen had top 32 finishes. So Oak Ridge cross country, they've been strong for years. It looks like they're going to be strong again here in the postseason with the return of Gary Joller because, you win a large school race at Clovis Invite, that's doing something right. So that's all I got.
All right. Well, Matt, we have another big weekend of high school football coming up. I'm actually doing a twofer this week. I will be on Thursday night, tomorrow night, at Sutter High School, where 12 Bridges is facing Sutter in what should be the PVL championship, essentially. Raging Rhinos are 7-0, 3-0 in PVL play. Sutter is 7-1, 4-0 in PVL play. The Rhinos have been dominant on both sides of the ball. They've outscored their opponents 307-52 this year. Pretty much running clocks in every game. But this one is going to be the toughest test they've faced by far. Sutter comes in averaging 226 yards per game. The offense as a whole, 226 rushing yards, sorry. The offense is averaging nearly 400 per game. 12 Bridges has a pretty solid rushing attack of its own with Nathan Crawford, who leads the section with 23 touchdowns, and is seventh in rushing yards with an even 1,000. Chasing him is going to be a pretty big player for the Huskies. Fresno State commit Auckland Asiata, a 3-star edge rusher by 24/7 Sports, who's 6'3", 240. He has 10 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and leads the Huskies with quarterback pressures with 20. And from what I've seen from him, he'd probably have a lot more sacks, but it looks like he starts the pressure. The quarterback looks at him and goes, "Oh crap," runs away, and other players will pick up the sack. So this one's going to be a very interesting game. And like I said, Sutter wins this game. They're probably looking at a second consecutive PVL title. 12 Bridges wins this game, and they're looking at a first league championship in program history. And then Friday night, I will be up at Nevada Union for Placer Nevada Union football. These two reigniting their rivalry, and this one's going to be a really interesting thing. Placer has won the last 5 meetings against the Miners. This one just feels like I think Placer should win this game, but with West Park being next weekend, it just feels like this could be a trap game for the Hillmen if they get caught looking ahead. I don't think they will, but I'm really looking forward to that one. Matt, what about you? Where are you going to be this weekend?
Um, you know, I I'd like to see that Lincoln Oakmont game now that it's Thursday, but I was planning on going to see Folsom volleyball, so I don't know what I haven't decided there yet. But Friday night, and I'm looking through my notes because I don't think I had notes for Vista's game, but I don't remember talking about Vista Del Lago. Did I talk about Vista Del Lago? Yeah, I can't.
If you didn't, we'll throw them in right now.
Yeah, I can't find it. But anyway, they won big. I mean, they won something like 49-28 against Del Campo, and they've got all the guys who normally do it: Johnny Kett, Matt Long, Xavier Bryan. They were there on offense. And one stat I did remember, and you saying it made me think of it, was tackles for a loss. I believe there's Logan Murray for Vista Lago had something like 4.5 tackles for a loss or 6 tackles for a loss in one game. It was crazy. And that you saying that stat made me think of it. But so I'm glad I remembered to get Logan Murray's name in there. But anyway, yeah, Friday night I will be at Oak Ridge for the Granite Bay Oak Ridge game. This will be my first time seeing the Grizzlies. So the last 3 times these teams played, it's been a one point game. And for the last 5 times they played, it's been a 1-point game. So my prediction is a 1-point win for Oak Ridge. So, but it could just as easily be a 1-point win for Granite Bay. But that's going to be a great
question. Do you think it's going to be someone goes for 2 or someone misses an extra point?
I'll go for 2.
I like it.
I know Granite Bay went for 2 probably 3 years ago and won at Oak Ridge, and I remember that probably. I remember that game, and it was a good, great win for Granite Bay because they went for 2. But yeah, it's got to be going for 2. No one's going to miss an extra point here.
I agree. Well, hey, it's going to be an interesting Friday night. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. We should have a good another good week of football coming up, and it feels like everything's starting to wrap up now. And I want to say this is the last week, maybe beginning of next week is the last regular season volleyball too. So we're gonna have some good stuff there as we get into the postseason on that. Big time of year for us and gonna be fun to watch.
There is.
That's gonna do it for this week's episode of the Jordan and Matt Show. I've been Jordan.
And I've been Matt.
We'll see you next time.